It doesn't cost us anything to be nice. It's a choice. The same as it doesn't cost us to be polite. It's a choice. So going back to, has anyone told you today, I love you? That's a choice. That's a choice for us to share those statements with our loved ones. And that's a choice for us to work on that within ourselves. Aloha and welcome back to the So What podcast. This is Jason. I am your host. Well, that's like evil laughter there. Today, I wanted to talk about a question that someone asked me yesterday. I was walking the dog and I saw someone I knew across the street riding a bike. And I heard, ho! Because a lot of times in Hawaii, it's, ho, bro. And I said, oh, and I threw up a shaka. And then he said something else. And it's this guy, Kev, who I know, who is one of the co-founders and owners of Old Queen Street Stadium, which is really cool. If you're ever in Honolulu, you should check it out because they have an amazing archive of vintage University of Hawaii sports apparel, jerseys, pieces of history, as well as other pieces of local history. That'd be really cool to check out. So Kev was riding his bike. We said, ho, bro. And he said something. I couldn't catch it. So he swung a U-turn and he went around and he came over, rode up. He said, and the question he asked was, has anyone told you today, I love you? And I laughed and I replied, my wife. And he laughed. And I thought it was an interesting statement and an interesting question because if you think about it, how often do we go through life without maybe not love, but something else positive being said to start the day? And I think that's really important. And I thought it was really interesting because how often do so many of us go through life without starting the day with a positive thought or a statement? And it just shows the power that people have with words, whether that be a loved one saying something kind or loving to another loved one, or really even the dialogue, monologue, whatever you want to call it, that we have going on between our two ears. And more important, in some ways, is that soundtrack that's going on in our head. I really appreciated that Kev asked that question, wanted to say that, and then it got me thinking off and on throughout the day just about that, about people, especially in this day and age, who are willing to express and be open. Now, I realized that you could argue the love between acquaintances, friends who become family, biological family, married family. You can definitely argue the love is different levels there. But I do think it's really important that we spend some time, if we're not saying I love you, at least being loving to other people. I've certainly, as a writer, come to appreciate words, and years back, doing the 5 love languages test, found that words of affirmation were probably my primary love language. So there is definitely something there for me that I'm a little more partial to when it comes to words and tones. But I think as I've gone on the journey, especially as I've wandered through therapy, even more so do I realize how important it is to, not that it's not important if someone else says it, but there are periods in our life where maybe even people say it, but we don't hear it because of whatever's going on. Maybe we're stressed, maybe some kind of issue with our health. Maybe there's just exhaustion from a lot of really good things going on that we're not as aware of our surroundings as we could or should be. It's even more important in chapters like that, seasons like that, that we take the time to much tell ourselves I love you? How often have you told yourself today, I love you? I mean, shoot, I don't even remember the last time I told myself that, now that I think about it. I work on mantras. I work on intentional thoughts because I know that I need to grab the reins in my head. Otherwise, I can get on the wrong train. Who knows where that'll lead? Definitely not the destination that I was seeking a lot of times. So I appreciate when people will randomly just show up and ask me a question out of the blue. One of the earlier questions, one of the earlier moments, many, many years back, I was working at Safeway just out of high school. And there was this woman who would always stop by. And one day she asked me, if you could do anything, you didn't have to worry about money, what would you do? I'll never forget that question because I didn't have the answer for it. I'd never even thought such a question, such a way of thinking or being or operating was even possible. I think that's the beauty of constantly really looking and being open in your life. I've been fortunate as I've journeyed, especially taking a pretty open spiritual approach to it, to, as I pointed out in the past, had some really wonderful mentors, my teacher, family, loved ones, who definitely drop massive ahas. But I've also been fortunate just to take to heart when people ask things that really stump me. I think part of that is because in the course of my life, especially earlier, I read a lot of different things. And even now, I might not finish a book cover to cover, but I do make my way through it. I pick up excerpts. I look at different things. I process. I'm always reading. I'm always thinking. And when I'm presented with those questions, those systems that make me approach it differently, and by it, I mean life, how I might navigate, how I might journey, I find it refreshing to have and possibly take a new approach. Doesn't necessarily mean we'll take a new approach, but I do appreciate being able to consider different sides of life, look at all the many facets. And I think part of that is because I see an interconnection in much of it. A lot of my journey, especially knowing how intense anxiety can be, how low depression can be, there's a part of me that's always seeking and trying to find and expand peace. How do I create more peace? How do I allow more peace? And I don't think peace necessarily means, totally zen, tranquil, 24/7. I think peace really is being present, being at ease with whatever it is that's facing you. And it's funny, the more that I go on the journey, the more that I find new ways to approach things, and the less rigid I allow myself to be, the greater peace there is. And I appreciate that. I value that. I welcome that. This past week, I had a chance to go for work to visit our headquarters back in my hometown of Hilo. And I ran into one of the women who works on our team at the plant there, who I'd met 2 years ago at a drive that our Kokua initiative does to support those in need. And I remember she and a number of our team go every week, every month, like try to be a part of as many different Kokua efforts back in Hilo, since that's our home, to help and assist. And part of that, it's rewarding. They appreciated it. They appreciated being able to help. It was interesting in the time since she's been promoted twice, and she made the comment, just figuring out how to try to balance it all. And I think that's just been another part of that whole equation, trying to figure out the piece, trying to expand and allow. Every time I say trying, I hear Adia in the background, and I can picture her slapping me in the forehead. Do or do not. There is no try. Very Yoda-like, and just doing a better job of allowing for there to be tranquility, even when there's some really nightmarish things that are going on in life. And each dream, each nightmare, whatever it is, they're different and unique to each of those people. And in follow-up to the conversation I had with our last guest, Chris Nutter of the Chris Nutter podcast, he and I were talking briefly the other day, and what he, as a public servant, law enforcement professional, has seen, the things that he's had to deal with. I mean, it takes me back to my dad as well. Barely out of high school in Vietnam, the things that he shared that he saw and had to deal with. It's so crazy to me because as I've had my own struggles and challenges and I've seen things in my life, I certainly haven't encountered what they have yet in two different instances. It's very interesting how they've been able to navigate and, respect them both in different ways. Whether this is what the world sees or not, I think something that Chris, my dad, even my uncle, other people I know who have had to navigate that field, and so many of my friends who have served and got deployed during one of the many wars just in our lifetimes here on this earth. They're just really nice people. And it's just so amazing to me because it doesn't cost us anything to be nice. It's a choice. The same as it doesn't cost us to be polite. It's a choice. So going back to, has anyone told you today, I love you? That's a choice. That's a choice for us to share those statements with our loved ones. And that's a choice for us to work on that within ourselves. Now I realize to make something habitual, it takes work, and choices can be work to navigate and have a positive, uplifting, objective attitude. That's a lot of work, and that is probably much of the work. That's where we can struggle at times with achieving a sense of balance and allowing more peace in our lives. So that one little question, has anyone told you today that I love you? Definitely opened up a lot of thoughts for me. But to recap, I think it's also a good, excellent recurring reminder of really the power of choice. Every day, if you wake up, that's a gift. Every day, if you wake up, you're not in pain, you have food on the table, you have a roof over your head, that's a gift. And I think I said this in the last podcast of Chris, but there's so many of us in life who, gosh, we have so much more than the vast majority of human history has had, as well as number of people, a large number of people who are alive today. So there's a lot to be grateful for. And I think when we start to reframe and we start to just allow and cultivate that space, that's how we can really start our day with I love you to ourselves and to our loved ones, and really mean it. So with that, I hope you found some value in this. I'm thinking of all the many YouTubes I've watched where people say, smash the like, hit the subscribe, or smash the subscribe, hit the like, whatever it is. And that's usually up front, but here we are at the end. So if you made it this far through this whole thing, virtual high five to you, because I can check the analytics. And I know from my own behavior in listening to other podcasts, I don't always make it to the end. But if there's any value you found in this, that's great. I'm stoked for you. And with that, much aloha, much love. Stay tuned because I'm going to be working on getting my brother Troy Walter, and you can kind of hear something that I think really resonates with this, because his whole vibe is to spread joy and aloha wherever you go every single day and be the best that he can be. And I'm excited to have that conversation and to record it and to put it out there in the universe. All right. Well, thanks for being out there. And until the next time, hui hou.